Good day, sir. I am Geraldine de la Peña, and together with my group, Rose Ann Perido, Nicole Patilona, and Catherine Pineda, and we are the Group 3 reporters. Our report is all about learners with difficulty hearing. Introduction. Students with hearing impairment are either deaf or hard of hearing. Students who are deaf do not have sufficient residual hearing to understand speech without special instruction and training. On the other hand, students who are hard of hearing have enough residual hearing to understand speech and learn in a regular class without much difficulty. Hearing impairment is not simply an inability to hear or to communicate through speech. The, the most devastating effect of deafness is the deprivation of language. A hearing person acquires the complex linguistic system of his or her culture as part of normal growth and development in a spontaneous, effortless, and natural manner. Deafness, on the other hand, deprives the person of the normal use of the hearing mechanism. He or she does not acquire the listening skills that provide the base for the development of speaking, reading, and writing and other communication competences. The condition brings about corollary problems in cognitive development, emotional adjustment, difficulties in socialization, and anxiety in the daily experiences that only a person with hearing impairment can describe. Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind, described the problem of deafness as deeper and more complex. A much worse misfortune, for it means the loss of the most vital stimulus, the sound of the human voice, that brings language, set of thoughts, aster, and keeps us in the company of man. For me, difficulty in hearing can affect a person in communicating to others, like their daily conversation. It can also affect in their job opportunities and in education. So for the students who have with hearing loss or hearing problem, it can greatly affect to their educational background because during the discussion, it is hard for them to understand what are the teachers talking about their lessons and the difficulty in following the discussion. For the teachers, they should learn sign languages because it may help for their students for easier to understand their conversation. And sign languages, this is one of the best way to make it easier for communicating to others. Teachers may recommend to his or her students to use those hearing devices like hearing aid to have the best way access to education.
Good day, sir. I am Rose Anpedo Bid 1A, the continuation of the discussion of Lesson 3 of Module 6, entitled Learners with Difficulty in Hearing. I'm going to share to you about a young girl who is deaf and what are the ways or how special education deal with her to reduce the effect of deafness to her life. Her name is Elsa. She is a grade 1 student. She is 6 years old and she is a deaf. Studied in a rural school where she is well accepted by her teacher, by her classmates, even the school staff with her disability. She wears a hearing aid, enabled her to understand the class discussion. Sometimes her teacher called to her to recite, and sometimes she is not so intelligible in speech. Special education teacher teach Elsa some skills that student who is deaf like her need to acquire to improve her performance in class discussion. Elsa does this well in all subjects and gets a high grades. She studies diligently and behaved well in class. Despite her imperfect speech, her classmates like her. They pay attention to what Elsa says. In fact, they find it exciting to have a classmate who has special needs. Elsa using sign language, and they face Elsa in their natural voice and gestures. Her hearing aid does not bother them. They understand the condition of Elsa. Cause of deafness of Elsa is when she is 6 months of old and she got a disease which is called meningitis. Meningitis is a disease where membrane and spinal cord is painful that can cause blindness, deafness, and mental retardation. Elsa got a high fever and convulsion required her 2 weeks of hospitalization. Before she got sick, she can respond to the conversation to her surrounding just like babbling sound. When she recovered, she is not bothered to the loud voice of baby radio. The otologist or ears specialist explained to her mother that meningitis caused her to lose her hearing. The specialist recommended her mother to enroll Elsa in special education that will help her to acquire education just like normal children. At the age of 4, she enrolled in program at the Philippine School of Deaf in Pasay City. She wears hearing aid and learned sign language. Present, she enrolled in regular school in elementary where she is grade 1. The School of Special Education teacher works closely with the regular teacher so that Elsa can participate in all activities before and after class. The special education teacher teaches Elsa the special skills and tutor her on the lesson taken up in class. Elsa's parents expand their cooperation with the school to achieve the goals of Elsa. They think the future of Elsa. They get the feeling and assurance that Elsa can finish basic education, go on to the college, and be a normal and self-sufficient individual. That is the story of Elsa, who is deaf or having a hearing disability but acquire a fair education. As a future educator, we can use that ways or we can deal to our future student who has a disability or hearing disability that will help them to acquire an education. In the story of Elsa, I have 4 points that we must do or perform when we have a student who have a disability or hearing disability. First, acceptance. Just like the teacher and her classmate accept Elsa, we must accept them. We must accept her disability or his disability. Second, help them. Just like the teacher of Elsa in special education, she helped Elsa or she teach Elsa some skills that will improve or that will help her to the class discussion. As a future educator, we have a responsibility to take an action or we have an initiative to take an action to help our student, especially for those who have a disability. Third, be with them or be like them. Just like Elsa's classmate, they learn sign language and able to talk or understand Elsa. Lastly, support them. Just like the parents does, they support Elsa. They extend their cooperation in the school because they know that Elsa has a future. They want Elsa to be a good and a better person in the future. So, as a future educator, we must support them so that they improve yourself and they acquire education or they can make a better person. That's my part in our topic about learners with difficulty in hearing. And thank you for listening and have a great day.
In continuation of this topic, I'm Nicole M. Patalona, grade 1A. Let's talk about it. The definition from individuals with disabilities Act defines it as an impairment in hearing whether permanent or fluctuating. Deafness means a hearing impairment that is so severe that a child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Hearing impairment means an impairment in hearing, whether permanent or fluctuating, that adversely affects a child's educational performance but is not included under definition of deafness in this section. Hearing loss can affect a child's development of speech and language skills. When a child has difficulty hearing, the areas of the brain used of communication may not develop appropriately. This makes understanding and talking very difficult. To identify learners with difficulty hearing, observe a student and see if he or she does not following items below. Speaking loudly, positioning ear toward the direction of one speaking, asking for information to be repeated again and again. Delayed development of speech, watching the face of the speaker intently, favoring one ear, not responding when told, has difficulty following directions, does not mind loud noises, and lastly, leaning close to the source of sounds.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Catherine Cerneo Pineda, BA Ed 1A, and my topic on my reporting for today is all about the learning characteristics of the learners with difficulties in hearing. Kabalota nga ang sense of hearing isa ka paagi o kung way para makabalo kita sa isa ka bagay, maka-learn, makakuha knowledge. For example, sa klase, if ang maestra gatudlo, makabati ka, mabatian mo kung ano ang iyang tudlo, ano iya topic, ano iya lesson, kung kapos lang sa imo makahibalo sa isa ka bagay, kami intindihan mo yan kasi kung parte sa ano, kay syempre kabati ka, amo na nga importante ginang aton na sense of hearing para makabalo sa isa ka mga para makabalo sa isa ka bagay. Kag kabudlay sa isa ka estudyante kag sa isa ka taho kung may ara sa gatawag nga hearing problems or hearing problems deficiencies. For example, may friend ko tapos gina-istoryaya ko tapos may ara ko hearing problem, hindi ko ka bati maayo, hindi klaro ang iya ginahambal. Ti do nabudlayan ko kung mag-itsindi kung ano gibala ginahambal ya kay syempre ang iba niya mga tinaga daw hindi bala klaro, ti daw hindi ko maintindihan. Amo na nga kabudlay mag-intindi, makahibalo sa mga bagay-bagay kung may ara ka hearing problems. Ang mga students nga may ara hearing problems deficiencies, since they miss out daily conversation, also they may miss out crucial information. Hindi pareho sa iban nga mga students nga makabati lang, so kahapos lang sa ila makabalo, kay kaintindi lang sila, ka-clear lang sa ila pamatian. So amo na nga kita, hindi lang mismo ang educator, ang parents, makahelp sa ila overcome sina nga bagay o problem sa ilang hearing, kung paano kita makahelp sa ila sa sina nga nila nga problema. Need ta mag-invest sang time, sa aton nga energy para matudloan sila kung paano nila kita maintindihan kag paano dapat sila maintindihan. Especially ang mga bungol. Ang mga bungol ba hindi gid sila yakabate. So sila ano lang nila sa aton, lantaw lang nilang pagtikab sang aton nga baba, aton facial expression para makabalo kung ano ang aton gina-express, ano aton ginahambal. In general educational adoption, may ara kita ways, techniques, and instructional materials nga makabuli sa aton kung paano kita maka-adapt sa mga hearing impaired students kag sila man mismo sa aton. For example, teacher ko. So as a teacher, I should help students with the hearing problems, deficiencies, or hearing impaired students to help them develop their ability for speech, reading, or watching lips, mouth, or expressions sa isa ka tao. For example, kung siya may ginhatag sa akon nga bagay. So para mabalaan niya kung anong response ko sa iya, for example, ma-thank you ko. No, bisan hindi na ako magambal thank you, hindi ko na ma-meet lang kung kabalo sa nga ang meaning sang amo ni thank you. Makabalo sa nga ang response ko sa iya, thank you. As a teacher sa klase, kung kabalo ko nga akong nga students may hearing problems, magamit ko visual presentation sa akong nga klase para if hindi sila makabate, mabalaan lang nila kag maintindihan kung ang ano ako yung natudlo, kung ano akong topic, kay makita lang nila kay may visual presentation ko. May ara man mga students nga hindi siya bungol, hindi sa literally nga bungol, hindi lang gid clear ang iya nga pagkabati, especially kung layo. So papungkuon ko siya sa tubang ko para maintindihan niya ang akong hinahambal kay lapit ko sa iya kag tunog na ang iya nga mabatian. Share ang mga important parts ng akong nga lesson, isulat ko na sa board, especially mga important parts ng akong nga lesson. Para hindi gid sila mabulayan, hapos lang si ila, hindi sila kabati kay nasulat ko sa board, makita nila. Kag kung may araman ko activity nga pahimo sa ila, i-perform ko na physically acted instead of verbal para hapos lang gid sa ila kag hindi gid sila mabulayan kay na-perform ko na makuha nila kung ano akon nga point sang paubra ko sa ilang activity.